I've been wanting to do this video for a while now, and I'm actually currently in the process of decorating for Marlize's birthday today, and I decided, hey, why not? And I posted a poll in my stories, and most people voted for the video, so I decided to do a video. However, I also already wrote out some notes on my delivery, my labor and delivery, and I would be posting it at some point. After having Marlize and reminiscing on so many occasions about how the experience went for me, I think it would be really nice to record it, as well as let you all know all of the things that I went through during the process. So I went to the Mount Hope Clinic during my time of pregnancy, and my experience there was actually very good. The midwives and nurses were always very helpful, ready to answer questions. I also did my Lamaze classes there, and I found it was a great experience for any mom who is expecting. I think Lamaze is a great way to get information on some of the things that you may experience when going through labor and delivery. Around 37 weeks, I was already into my weekly visits at the clinic, and upon my weekly visit, I can't remember the exact date, my blood pressure, they did the vitals, and my blood pressure was a bit high. So every week when you go, they do a blood pressure test, urine test, and they weigh you. When they retook it, it was back to normal. So they noted it in my notes, and when the doctor saw it, she said, okay, well, just continue to monitor it. If you can go to a drugstore within the week and check it to make sure that it was okay, and if anything changed, just come straight back to the hospital. So of course I took note of it. Following week, which was when I was 38 weeks, now my weeks panned out very well with regards to my clinic appointments, because every week that I went, I was actually on the date. So I was actually 38 weeks when I went to my clinic appointment. It was a Monday morning, and they tested my blood pressure again, and it was high. It was a lot higher than the previous week, and they retook it. When they retook it, it was still high. So they wrote it down in my notes, and when I went to see the doctor, she informed me that it was a bit of a concern coming down to later pregnancy, and if you're to term, what they usually do is they try to induce at that point. So they hooked me up to a monitor, just to make sure everything was fine with the baby. Everything was fine, and they decided that we were going to induce the Tuesday morning. So I went home at that point, ready to go to the next day to be induced. I was swept the previous week, as well as when I was 38 weeks. Now that is I don't know if anybody has ever experienced that who's watching this. If not, and you're planning to have a child, when you get swept, that is like one of the most painful experiences ever. So they did it when I was 37 weeks, but they didn't get to fully do it because of how painful it was. So when they did it at 38 weeks, when I left that clinic appointment, I started to cramp up, but it was bearable cramps, kind of like when you're getting your period, but not like the most painful period. At that point, I left and I went to my sister's house. My sister lives in St. Augustine, so it was a little bit closer to Mount Hope. So in case of anything, I was like right there. So I decided that I would stay there for the day and wait it out. We kind of just chilled around. I couldn't really rest because I was in a lot of pain, as well as my anxiety was obviously at its highest because I was going to be induced the next day. So I didn't get to really rest, but I just chilled around, that kind of thing. And I felt as though things were happening, things were progressing, because the pain was starting to get a little bit more intense. Like I said, nothing too unbearable, because it was like a period pain. It was just very consistent, and it was like in the pelvic area. So around 5-6 o'clock in the evening, I started to feel a little bit more pain. Now at this point, I was 3 to 4 centimeters dilated, but I had been 3 centimeters dilated since the previous week when they checked me. So I felt as though things were progressing, so I decided to go back to the hospital. They were able to let me get checked. I did not progress. I was still 4 centimeters. So they decided to sweep me again. With that sweep, however, things got a little bit more intense, and I could feel it kind of. I know the contractions got a little stronger, and I started to get a lot of pressure in my back. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna go home and get all my hospital bags and everything and come back to where my sister lived, just to be safe. Really wanted to do the baby mama dance, but it just never happened because everything just started to move so quickly at that point. And the pain was getting really intense. I remember I was, I can't remember, I was rushing to do something. I can't remember if it was to wrap a gift or because this was on the 18th of December, and I was sitting there and I was like, okay, this pain is really getting serious, and I wonder if this is how it's going to be. So I ended up going back by my sister. I got all my pillow, my hospital bag, everything, and I went back by my sister's house, and we kind of just decided, okay, we're going to spend the night there. And for that entire night, the contractions kept going, but it was never for a consistent period of time. So sometimes it would be like every 8 minutes, and then randomly 20 minutes would pass before I got another contraction. And each time it happened, I would get up and I would pace up and down my sister's hallway, and I would wake up Warren just to inform him that, okay, I'm getting a contraction. I was tracking it on my phone, but like I said, it was every 8 minutes, and then for like 20 minutes I wouldn't get another contraction. So I just timed it. For that entire night I was in pain. I couldn't sleep, and the pain was a little bit more intense, still bearable, but it was very distracting. So like I just kept praying and just like calling on God to help me to be able to cope with the pain. At that point I had already told my husband that I didn't want to do a C-section. If I could bear it, I didn't want to do an epidural, but I had already set my mind to, if I couldn't bear the pain, I wanted an epidural. Around 3 o'clock that morning, which would be the 18th, I was having a contraction, and then I had to use the washroom. I used the washroom and I went back to lie down, and for some reason from 3 to 6 I didn't get any more contractions. Everything just eased up and I was able to take a nap. Around 6 o'clock I got up because I was carded to go to the hospital for 7:30 that morning. I got up around 6 o'clock, I bathed, I got ready, and I said, okay, let's go. So I went to the hospital and I had a little bit of a wait. So they weren't able to check me until around 8:30 before they warded me. And when they checked me, the doctor checked me, and she was like, okay, well, you're still 4 centimeters dilated, but I think your membrane's ruptured. And I was like, my memory is ruptured. She's like, yes, I think your water broke. Did you experience anything? So I was like, no, well, I used the washroom around 3 o'clock, but I got the urge to use the washroom, and I went and I used the washroom. But thinking back on it, when I used the washroom, it was clear. It was just like a clear liquid. And I didn't feel like my bladder was full. I just felt the urge to use the washroom. And it wasn't like this big gush everybody speaks about. I was able to reach to the bathroom in time and use it. So I didn't think about it, and I didn't think my water had broke. But anyway, she told me that she thinks my water broke and they need to do an ultrasound. So I had to wait for that. I had to get an ultrasound done. When I did the ultrasound, they confirmed that my water did break, and they took me over to the delivery area to get checked so that they could ward me in the antenatal unit. That's before you have the baby. So they checked me. They said I was still 4 centimeters, and they said, okay, so we're gonna induce you because your water broke. The baby can't stay in there for longer than 24 hours by our standards in this country. They decided that they're gonna induce me, and I was carded to be induced at 6 o'clock that evening. So they warded me. I ended up getting a bed and everything by around 10 o'clock that day. Warren had to leave me because visiting hours was, I think visiting hours were 11 to 1 and 4 to 6. So he would come back around 11. So when I got warded at 10, they gave me this tablet to start the induction process. I think it's to ripen the cervix. So they gave me that tablet, and the contractions started to get a little more intense, and they were monitoring me. So I decided to see if I could rest a little bit, just lie down. I couldn't sleep because it was daytime. I mean, we are already accustomed to sleeping at night. I couldn't sleep, so I just lay there in the bed and I tossed and I turned, and I just waited for visiting hours. because if anyone who ever had a baby in the hospital knows, you're just ready for visiting hours for when your family could come. So I Warren came, one of his friends came as well, a very close friend of ours, and we ate lunch. I didn't eat much. I was in a little bit of pain, so I was a little bit annoyed. And then they left. And for the rest of the afternoon until 4, I just counted on the time until my mom would come to visit. And they kept checking me every 2 hours or so to make sure that the baby's heart rate was fine and that kind of thing. So around 4 o'clock, my mom came and they decided to check me again. I still had not progressed past 4 centimeters, and they decided to do the enema because I was carried to go down into delivery at around 6. So when they did the enema, obviously, if you don't know what an enema is, it's something to make you pass stool. So I did that, and instantly I had to use the washroom. So my mom was there, thankfully, because waddling and rushing, is not a good combination. So I went to the washroom, and then visiting hours was up. And even though I was carded to go down to delivery, it was peak season. Everybody was having a baby at a point in time, and people were coming in by emergency. So emergency section, emergency delivery. So I was just up there waiting and waiting and waiting. And ever so often they would come and say, we're trying to clear up the delivery to carry you down to get induced, that kind of thing. I was sharing a room with someone, and she was there for bed rest. So she turned in early, and at that point I was just like, I can't sleep. Lights off in the room, and I'm like anxious. I look out the window, and Warren is waiting in the car park, and I just wanted, like, counting on the time, and they gave me antibiotic IVs because of the fact that my water broke to ensure that everything was fine. But I was annoyed because where the IV was kind of like where I had to bend my hand and all these kind of things. It was a little bit painful. So eventually, while I was settling down to sleep, because it was around 11 o'clock, a clerk came up to get me. Now, at this point, I am bordering on 24 hours in labor, and this woman came up with the worst attitude ever, and she starts on my case. Where you going with that pillow? You can't carry that pillow in delivery. Was all this in this bag? Who holding that bag? And not holding that bag. Where's the baby bag? Where's your husband? This kind of thing. So I just breathed, and I was like, my husband is downstairs with the baby bag, and he'll take the pillow. Well, he better be waiting downstairs for me, because we have to go straight into delivery and. But honestly, at that point, I was just like, I'm ready to meet my baby. I'm not gonna let this woman stress me out. I know I have a hard task ahead of me, and this is not the moment. And of course, with her grumpy self, she continues to grumble as we are going down the elevator and this kind of thing. Of course, I messaged Warren instantly, and I was like, be waiting by delivery, because I'm not in the mood for this woman. So he was right there waiting with the baby bag. I took the baby bag, I gave him the pillow and my bag, I kept my bag. And I gave him the pillow, and he gave me the baby's bag. So while we're in the room now, I had to switch out into my gown that was going to deliver in. And she's grumbling, and this is all the pampers you're bringing for the baby, and what the baby going in, and with the baby towel, and she just went on and on. But at that point, like I said, I was just ready to meet my baby. I wasn't going to let this woman upset my entire mood. So anyway, I changed into my gown, and they told me when I was changed, Warren would be able to come in. So I changed into my gown, I went up on the bed, and eventually Warren came in. I was getting a bit anxious because I find they were taking really long to call him in, and I really didn't want to go through that experience without him, especially after having done Lamaze and knowing that he would be there. So he eventually came, and they decided, okay, it was time to hook me up to the Pitocin, which would induce the labor. From the moment they hooked up that Pitocin, my pain went from 8, which was what I thought was a 8, to 50. And in 20 minutes, it went from 50 to 100. And I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The contractions were coming faster than I could even take a breath. Warren was there, and he was telling me, okay, breathe, because you learn to breathe in Lamaze and all these kind of things, but the pain was coming so fast and so intensely that I couldn't understand how it went from 8 to 100 so quickly. And I remember saying, okay, I'm ready for the epidural. Now, I requested the epidural before the pain started for the mere fact that I wanted to give that consent before I was in a moment of like so much pain that I couldn't think. So while I was in a moment of clarity, I requested the epidural. I told them I want it. So of course it takes a little while due to the low staffing. It took a while for the anesthesiologist to come, and by that time I was in so much pain I didn't even like deny it. Like I knew, like I was in so much pain at that point I didn't even think about not getting the epidural. So they hooked me up to the epidural, and the pain subsided for a little while. But then after about 15-20 minutes, it started to get back more intense. And the anesthesiologist comes and he's like, your pain threshold is very low because um, this dose we gave you should work. And of course, I'm in so much pain. I'm in labor. This is a man talking, and we all know how men know labor pain or think they know labor pain. So I'm just there, like, just in my mind, I'm like, just top up my epidural because I really can't. I'm not in the mood for this right now. And he tops it up, and it starts back to work. It's fine. I feel the numbness, and I'm not getting any pain. And then again, within 10-15 minutes, it starts to wear off. And I'm confused because after I've watched so many YouTube videos of people in labor and giving birth, I mean, standard of care should be the same in general, and this is an epidural and it's wearing off in 15 minutes. And I'm like, what is going on here? So eventually they called the junior anesthesiologist because the senior had something else to do, and she topped it up. But at that point, right before she comes, I start to beg for a C-section. And ladies, if your husband is anything like mine, no matter how much you tell them you don't want a C-section, in that moment that they see you in that pain, they are going to just cave. So I am there begging for a C-section. I'm grasping at straws. Like, I was literally lying on the bed and grasping. My hand was straight up in the air and I was grasping. Like, I don't know what I was grabbing at. I was just grasping and trying to breathe. And I'm begging for a C-section at this point. And my relative who works in the hospital came in and he tried to counsel me and guide me and tell me, no, you want to do this natural, let's try and do this naturally. So I said, okay, get the anesthesiologist to come here and top up this epidural because I cannot function. I cannot do this. I cannot. And she comes in and she gives me the top up of the epidural. And I think that was when it really kicked in and I was able to actually feel the effects of the epidural. However, at that same time, the midwife comes and she checks me and she tells me that I'm ready to push. And generally speaking, I've heard it before, but the fear of epidural is that when you are ready to push, you're not going to know when you need to push. So everyone, well, not everyone, Warren is sitting there looking at me. The anesthesiologist decided to stay on just in case anything. And she's looking at me and the midwife is looking at me like, are you going to be able to push out this baby? Because at that point, I'm completely numb. And I willed everything in me to push out Marlize. Like, I was not gonna let them win this battle of epidurals are bad. So I decided, like, in my mind that this was gonna happen. So I focused. I was still able to feel the pressure for contraction, so that was the beauty of it. Usually they coach you and they tell you, okay, you're having a contraction now, push. But I was able to feel the contraction pressure despite the fact that I had the epidural and I was completely numb. And I pushed at every contraction and I was able to, so I started pushing at 4 o'clock and Marlize was born at 4:37. Of course they had to cut me at that point, but I had reached a stage where I just wanted her out. And they cut me and she was out, and of course she gave us the biggest scare of our life because she didn't cry as soon as she came out, and she was gray, purple and limp, and we were like, what is going on? And from the time she made that first cry, I was just looking at her in awe, and Warren bursted into tears. And it was truly an amazing experience. They put her on top of me. I honestly could not believe that. I mean, you're pregnant and you've seen babies being born and you see all these things, but in that moment, it truly is a magical experience. Like, it's nothing that could be described, it's nothing that people could tell you. It's your own experience in that moment, and like everything else just fades away, and it's just you and your baby and your husband. And then they took her to clean her off and wipe her up, and then of course I had to get stitches. So at that point I was so numb, they had to help me off the bed into the wheelchair and all these kind of things. um, at that point I was the they allowed Warren to take me up to the room because there were no clerks available to do so, but he had to leave immediately. I was very drowsy and tired and out of it, so they took Marlize to clean her up, and then they eventually brought her back to me, but I was still so out of it that they ended up taking her to feed her. It's something that I wasn't happy about. By the end of the day, she was fed, and then when morning visiting hours came, I was able to get up and walk and get to her and feed her and all these kind of things. But honestly, if I had to rate my experience, I would say it was generally a good one. The nurses in postnatal, however, weren't as friendly as the nurses at the clinic that I experienced anyway, but it wasn't a horrible experience. Generally, when I requested my epidural, the midwives tried to get me to not do it, but I know myself and I knew that I would want it because of my pain threshold. I knew that I needed that. But in all honesty, even though you always have that mom guilt, you always have that feeling of should I have just tried to do it natural or that kind of thing, the point is that each experience is unique and each experience is different, and I've learned this the hard way after beating myself up and thinking that okay, maybe I should have done it this way. Each experience is unique, each experience is different, each person is going to have a different experience, and some people may be able to do it fully natural and without any medication, and others wouldn't, and I was just one of those persons who wasn't able to. The point is I was able to have a healthy baby, despite the hardships of an epidural and having to recover. And people always say that the recovery time is harder. At the end of the day, I'm here today and I'm fine, and Marlize is fine, and I wouldn't change that experience. Of course I would say that I'll try next time to see if I can go natural, but who knows. I've always heard that getting induced is one of the hardest labors you'll have because the pain is nothing compared to if you progress naturally. I mean, who knows if that's true? I don't know because I got induced. But the point is, at the end of the day, no matter how you brought your baby into the world, the point is it doesn't change the fact that you're a mom. So I just wanted to make this video to show my experience and what I went through, and kind of just document that experience in general so that I could always remember, my labor and delivery with Marlize, and any future children I may have, I would like to do the same thing. And if you're a mom out there struggling with how you gave birth or how you labored, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're holding your baby in your hand and your baby's happy and healthy and in the world. God granted us so many different ways to do this, and each person's ability is different, and you should never beat yourself up for something that you were still able to do just in a different way. So I just want to say thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.